Da 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 da. So, why the controversy? Well, the controversy actually isn't from America or Western audiences. The controversy is Japanese. And Sazae-san, again, is another one of those super safe cartoons that's about family, ordinary family life. It's closer to... It's like in between Hamtaro and Crayon Shinchan. It's all about ordinary family stuff that happens. There's no crazy adventures. And a lot of these cartoons are about the family interactions. So what's the problem? What's the problem? Well, there's several. Number one, in the beginning of Sazae-san, when Sazae-san was becoming popular, is popular as a comic. And then it became more popular, so it became a manga. And then, of course, it became a cartoon show. And it's been a cartoon show for 50 years, longer than that even. In fact, I think it became a cartoon series about the time the original artist passed away. And it became a cartoon. But she passed away in the 70s. And this was a popular comic in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and the 60s. And the TV cartoon reflects the comic strip. And that wouldn't make any sense to American audiences who are not familiar with Japanese culture, Japanese home life, Japanese social dynamics. So it's not for an American audience. It just wouldn't make any sense for an American audience. It doesn't work. It is very, very Japanese, and maybe that's the problem. It's too Japanese. It's only for a Japanese audience. But if you're a Japanese student and you want to understand a little bit of what home life is like, this is a pretty good example. Well, maybe not a good example, but it's an example of what it looks like the way people dress, the way people talk, the way that age has a different order inside the family. Age is very important. So let's get to the big controversy in this cartoon, which has nothing to do with the American audience. It has everything to do with the Japanese audience. And that is, the reason why it was made into a cartoon is because the comic in the newspapers, in the magazines, divided a lot of people. It divided a lot of people's opinions because the hero of the comic, Sazae-san, is this young woman who was very independent and had her own opinions and had her own ideas about how she wants to live her life and about how she wants her relationships to be and how to raise her kids and how to be with her friends in the neighborhood, which was very, very against traditional Japanese values. So very traditional Japanese hated Sazae-san. They did not like this comic. They complained so much that they wanted the newspaper that showed this comic to be shut down. That is how serious the complaints were. But there were enough supporters of the comic that, of course, they could keep it going, and enough so that they could have a cartoon. So where's the problem? Well, you have to understand Japanese society generally is very, very conservative. They stay with within family rules. What are the family rules that were shaped and created generations ago and have never changed and are impossible to change? And here is this very future thinking, we say progressive comic about women's independence, about a woman deciding what happens inside the house, what happens in the family, instead of the men. The woman trying to influence the outcomes of certain relationships in the family instead of just doing the way everybody does. Your neighbors and the people across the street and the people on the other side of Tokyo, with the way they do, everybody does the same way. Why can't she just follow the rules that we all know? Well, she's not satisfied with those rules. They're not good rules, so she's not going to follow them. And also, part of the thing that makes Sazae-san the very spirited focus of the show is she argues a lot with her husband, who is this very, very calm, polite, gentle person. But she's never satisfied with him, so she always complains about him and to him. And that is the opposite of the image that Japanese want to have of their wives. They want this image of their wives to be very quiet. They don't talk. And when they answer, it is when the men are talking to them. They don't have an opinion. And here's this cartoon where this woman, every episode she has an opinion. And she wants to argue her opinion and persuade others about her opinion, which, outside of Japan, that's like, okay, that's normal. That's kind of how life is, right? So again, it wouldn't make sense to an American audience to see a show like this. What's so very political about this cartoon? It's kind of how my life is. But in Japan, no. But the controversy doesn't stop there. So remember when I told you that the original creator of this character, the comic artist, she died in like the 70s, the early 70s. She'd been making this comic for 30 years. So Sazae-san as a character was very progressive, very forward-thinking for 30 years. And then now, this is kind of how it is. It's kind of how it is. Now jump ahead 50 years in the future. The same people who complained about Sazae-san in the past use Sazae-san as a model for this is traditional Japan. This is how the real Japan should look like. So the very conservative, very traditional Japanese completely flipped their point of view about this cartoon. And now instead of fighting it, they use it as a symbol for these are the traditional family values. This is the way things should have been in Japan all this time, and they always used to be this way. But now modern Japan is ruining the family system. Modern Japan, modern Tokyo is ruining Japanese culture. That's the controversy. And isn't that funny? 50 years ago, they were saying, no, this cartoon is ruining Japanese society, painting a picture, inspiring women to think for themselves. And now they're saying, yeah, but it's always been this way. No. We never complained about that. My granddad watched this, and my dad watched this, and I watched this, and it's always been this way. We've always been fans of the show. It's Japanese society that's changing. That's what's wrong, And it's so funny because we see this here in America too. It's just so crazy. The world's a crazy place. But it's not crazy. Sazae-san. And to be honest, if you watch an episode of Sazae-san, all of this controversy, you're going to miss it. you're going to miss it. Because it's not a part of the stories in the cartoons. It's always a very home-focused story. Very calm. And if you want something a little calmer than Sazae-san, then watch an episode of Hamtaro. Yeah. So that's your homework. Your homework is to either find an episode of Sazae-san, and if you don't have any young little kids around, you can watch Crayon Shin-chan. You can. And if you do have little kids, but they don't like people, they like pets, you can watch Doraemon. Otherwise, everybody can sit down with a nice warm cup of herbal tea and watch an episode of Hamtaro.